That's,
Here we
yeah,
go.
so
Um,
yeah, it's recording. Okay, so
all right.
yeah, anytime you want to start.
All right. This is Miguel Damas. He's a doctor that we're going to be doing Ask the Doctor every Saturday. I will ask you to submit questions to me a week in advance about the Coimbra Protocol, or maybe we might get into other topics. But right now, I'd like you to stick on the protocol and questions about the protocol. Uh, Anything you want to ask. We'll try to get to all questions eventually. We may not get to your question this week, but submit it and we'll try to get to it. So uh, that's all I have for now. Miguel, maybe you can introduce yourself to everybody and give us a little background on yourself and the Coimbra Protocol.
Yeah, fantastic. So thank you so much for the invitation and for this initiative. It's fantastic to be able to speak to so many people and to try to bring some light and be available to patients or people that just want to know more about these amazing treatments, the ins and outs, and discuss or have their answers, their questions answered in the best way I can. So my name is Miguel Damas. I am a medical doctor. I am board certified family physician. I do am specialized also in functional medicine. I have my own practice in Portugal, and I have patients a little bit over the world. If we count states in the US, it's almost 50 different countries slash states. And I've been doing the protocol for a while now. So I was trained with Professor Quim himself in March 2015. So almost 6 years now. And back then I was the second medical doctor to be trained that was not from South America. So
What year
despite
was
being
that?
2015.
2015. Okay.
Yeah. So the clinic, our center here in the country, we've been doing the protocol since 2012. Dr. Cristina Salles, she was my mother. She was a pioneer of the clinic, and she got she got to know about Professor Coimbra work, and she was trained through email and webinars. And back then, there was not that it was not easy to travel to Brazil. So when I was able to do it, I traveled to Brazil and I was trained. It was an amazing week, packed full of appointments and discussions with Professor Coimbra and to get all the details about the protocol. And then I came back and I started leading the pack here in Europe. As I was saying, I think I'm one of the youngest doctors in the world doing the protocol, but I'm one of the most experienced. So yeah, that's my background in terms of the Coimbra protocol. I've been treating mostly multiple sclerosis. I think it's the most common disease that is been treated with Coimbra protocol, but I have significant numbers of patients with rheumatoid arthritis, with lupus, vitiligo, psoriasis. I mean, any autoimmune condition that you may think that is common, I probably have some patient being treated right now. So that I just want to say right from the start that meeting Professor Coimbra was something that completely changed my professional life and even my personal life to an extent. And he allowed me to do what I went to med school to do, which is to really treat people and get them better, even conditions that I was teached that they may not get better. So yeah, that's my experience with the protocol so far.
Now, I've heard that Dr. Coimbra has been described as a genius, as a very humble man. Uh, what were your impressions of him when you met him?
Yeah, it is a very spot on description of him. I met him in his clinic in São Paulo, and he, for the amount of lives that he has changed, for the amount of knowledge that his brain has, is very, very simple, humble, and accessible. And it is very, I mean, anyone can have a talk with him if you meet him. I mean, he's not, it has no ego in that sense. It's a very humble, very human, very calm, very patient, and he's fantastic. He's a fantastic person.
How did he come about doing the protocol, and why don't you think that we see it more prevalent in medicine right now?
Yeah. Okay. So two interesting questions. So, um, as far as I know, the protocol or the research that started, that then culminated with the protocol, started by chance. It was treating a patient with some kind of neurologic condition. I don't know if it was post-stroke or Parkinson's. I do not know that, but that person had vitiligo, and it was in a place that was easily observable. It was in the forehead, and during the initial appointment, the professor Grimm asked for analysis, and he noticed that vitamin D was low, and they start with I think it was 10,000 units per day. We are talking here around 99 2000. I think it's or 2002. It was early 2000s. Um, and then 3 4 months later, when the patient came back to the follow up, Professor Green was reviewing his notes, and he takes very meticulous notes and very extensive notes. And he said, "Well, I'm sorry, but I have here written that you had uh, some lesion or some change in your skin, your forehead, but I don't see it." And the patient said, "Well, that's right. I just don't, I did nothing. I don't know what happened. But the fact is, it went away." And because he is a very curious man, I mean, he did his PhD, he did a postdoc in Sweden. So that somehow rang a bell, and he started researching. And back then, he noticed that there was already a significant amount of data in terms of the relationship between vitamin D and autoimmune conditions. And that's what sparked. He uh, started by understanding the mechanism of vitamin D, how we could control, start prescribing vitamin D and adjusting and seeing the effects, the changes in the analysis, changes in the clinical setting. And obviously, because he's a neurologist, the most common autoimmune disease is multiple sclerosis in terms of neurology. And yeah, it started developing, and what we now know as the Coimbra Protocol probably uh, was reached around 2012, I guess. So yeah, so that's why the protocol started. Now, in regard to your second question, is why don't we see this in 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 a broader medical uh, acceptance or interest? Um, there's a lot of different explanations that we could dive in. But the truth is, despite the results that can be achieved and are being achieved day after day by an extensive amount of patients, this treatment is quite dangerous. Um, and the biggest danger from a medical perspective of this treatment is that it is 100% relying on the patient and the patient commitment to follow certain rules. And any doctor that works with general population in national health system, I did for the first years of my career. While I was a resident, while I was doing my residency in family physician, I know for a fact that this treatment, if put out there and if it was available to everyone in the conventional or the let's call it the conventional medicine, it would bring more harm than good, because I know that most people would not do what they need to do, because unfortunately that's a significant part of the population. Any doctor will tell you this is true. So that is a significant problem. The other significant problem is the lack of what is the gold standard of medical research, which is the randomized controlled trials with big numbers. And we can go through this rabbit hole and discuss the ins and outs and the evidence that exists in regards to vitamin D, and the amount of evidence, the types of evidence, and why we can extrapolate that and assume there is a causal connection between vitamin D and its effect. But at the end of the day, all the guidelines that are set up in the regular practices and through in every country they are based in RCTs, randomized clinical trials, and when you don't have, the truth is you don't have the gold standard method to prove an intervention. That doesn't mean that the Coimbra Protocol doesn't have evidence, quite the opposite. It doesn't have that particular evidence. But that being said, just to put a little perspective on that, the prescription of thyroid hormone for hypothyroidism doesn't have RCTs. The prescription of insulin for anyone with type 1 diabetes that needs insulin doesn't have any RCTs. Even oxygen for anyone with technically dyspnea, so shortness of breath, and they need oxygen, they don't have that many RCTs to certify their use. So yes, it is true that the Coimbra Protocol doesn't have an RCT. It has a paper published in Brazil and around, I think it's 2012, 2014, that showed a 92% efficacy in that particular setting. But also interventions that are used on a daily basis don't really have. And actually, in a more general spectrum, only around 25% of all medical prescriptions or all medical interventions or healthcare interventions, if we put here nutrition and everything, only 25% are based in RCTs and these guidelines. So it's a very important question, discussion to be had, but we need to look these from I would say open horizons.
Have you ever heard, excuse me, I interrupted you. Have you ever heard a number given to the, I once did. I don't know whether it's accurate or not, and we can't pinpoint it, but a number of people that they think are on the protocol now. Then the number that I heard was 30,000 people. I don't know where that number came from. I don't know how accurate it is.
I would say, I would be guessing, but I would say it's more than that.
Yeah, I would too.
Because in 2015, when I did the training with Professor Coimbra, we had around 9,000 people already in the world.
Wow.
And we had two doctors, myself included, outside South America. So we have in Europe, we have a massive center, massive experience in Germany, in Italy, and the US. So I would say, 30,000. It doesn't strike me as too much or too many.
I see. Maybe, and like I said, I don't remember where I heard that number, where it came from. That could have just been the amount of people in Germany. I mean, because I know they are doing well there. They have a lot of doctors lot of research going on there.
30,000. I mean, maybe
But
they are doing those numbers. I think it's a little bit too much, but sorry, maybe it's true. I don't know. I know we have around 600 patients here in the clinic under management by me and my team. So um, that's why I think 30,000 it's quite, it's very likely to be a
would
correct
you like to
estimation.
field one question today to get started, or do you want to wait until?
Yeah,
All right.
let's
Here's
go.
our first question today is one that I've been dealing with personally because I do coach people throughout the world. When I say coach them, really, all that's to be done is to be a therapist. And I'm not licensed. I'm not anybody but just a father that had no hope. And when I got better, I thought, man, I got to tell the world about this because some father might be laying in bed thinking, I'm never going to go to my daughter's wedding, or I'm never going to do this again. And with the protocol, I've gotten back so much. Now, did I get everything back? No, but I've got a lot back. Anyway, that's enough about me. The question is that I'm dealing with a lot is generally it's in around the 9th, 10th, or 11th month, could be up to a year, that people really have a hard time. And I have to tell them, I mean, one of my friends was waking up blind in her left eye for about an hour. And I told her, and then she started taking it out on the doctor, saying, they're not all cut up that they're to be. And I said, listen, doctors are here to help you. They're not getting rich by doing this. They're here to help you. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. And I talked to her about 2 months later. It was like a totally different person. I mean, you could tell the healing process was starting to take place. But I tell people, it's like going up a hill and you get to that peak and it's going to get really rocky and hard. But when you finally get over that peak, you can raise your hands up and throw them in the air and say, man, I feel good. Because I know for myself, um, my doctor asked me one time, Mr. Otwell, how are you doing? And I said, honestly, doc, if I felt any better, there'd have to be two of me. I said, I feel so good. And I tell the world that I do. I wish I'd felt this way 20 years ago. Now, do I still have disabilities? Yes, I do. The disease was allowed to go through my central nervous system for 15 years and misdiagnosed. So I probably have some scar tissues. I have some old injuries, but a lot I got back. And for that, I'm grateful because when I went into the neurologist, they didn't give me any hope at all. Your only hope was a slow progression. And here, take this $50,000 a month medicine and, we'll hope it slows it up. But anyway, the question I'm going in circles here, is why do I feel bad during that time? And that's the
Yeah,
question.
that's a very interesting question. Um, and as with many questions in regards autoimmunity and multiple sclerosis and the Coimbra Protocol, it doesn't have a straight answer. So there's a lot of different variables that can play around that. One is technically we see and we expect somehow, so okay, before that, let me just get to what is the basic follow-up moments of the protocol, because that's important to answer your question. The basic moments are obviously the appointments and the blood analysis and the analytical checkup. And you should have your initial appointment. Roughly 4 to 6 months after, you should have your second follow-up with a new analysis. When you complete the first year of treatment, and then when you complete the second year of treatment. There's a lot of different reasons why we can have these big time frames in between appointments, but that's the basic ones. Sometimes I ask my patients to do a little more appointments when they don't feel that good, or we may need to make some adjustments, but this is the basic one. So what you're saying is that roughly 4 to 6 months after the second appointment or the first adjustment in vitamin D dosage, that's what is expected, people feel like a bit down. Technically, what we know that can happen is on the second semester or the third semester, usually around this 2 period of time, we see a dip in the vitamin D efficacy. And the reason is, or it's thought to be, while having a lot of vitamin D in the system, we kind of deactivate it a little bit to like as a measure of safety, because we have too much of an active steroid hormone. So we will try to reduce it. There's a specific enzyme that does it, and that may be a technical reason why after that period you feel a dip in your overall performance, if you want, but then you can go up again. That is one. In my practice, it's not that common. Uh, it's common-ish. It's not that common. But then there are other reasons that can push to it. So what is the cause? Either it's probably a decrease in the vitamin D efficacy, or it's something else. And this something else is an endless field. And just I want just to pause to tell you that I'm not addressing any specific case, not even your case. I cannot do it in this environment. So I'm talking broadly and theoretically. So theoretically, anything that increases inflammation can cause that decrease in overall health. Anything that increases the dysfunction of the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, so basically our ability to react to stress, either emotional, physical, or environmental stress, anything that pushes that system can cause a dip also in your overall health. So there's a lot of different reasons why people feel like that. When I have a patient that feels it, so first step is to assess whether or not vitamin D should be optimized or not. So
Can I say something that I've
yes, please.
seen with people that I'm talking to is their stress level? Like the one lady that was waking up blind, she was going to get married. A gentleman who was getting sick or having symptoms, he was having stress from some other thing. Don't you believe that stress can play a part in this and the
It's
symptoms
yeah, it's not
increasing?
it's not a belief. It's not a belief. It's a certainty and a scientific fact. Okay, so certainty, and I do know for sure that stress is the ultimate trigger of autoimmunity. And the reason I say this so uh, clearly is that more than 95% of my patients, when I ask them in the first appointment, why do you think you had this? Why you think it started? Why do you think you get worse? I had relapses.
Mhm.
99, more than 99,
Yes,
95% tell me
yes,
that's stress. And they
yes.
say that open without any leading information. And they usually go further. They either professional stress, so either negative stress, negative emotional stress, professional stress, the loss of some beloved one, anything to that regard, or even positive events. As you were saying, someone about to get married, it's quite common how many people have a relapse while preparing. It's a very joyful occasion, but it's very stressful to
Yes.
get
Yes.
ready. Have it, the birth of the first son is also another reason why people do get a deeper a spike of stress. So
To
that is a certainty.
interrupt you again and say something. People will often tell me, well, I go to the gym to relieve stress. And I'm like, you are relieving mental stress, but you got to understand you're physically stressing your body. And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
can, it doesn't always, but it can play a part in
Yeah. So that
how
is the
you
part
feel.
of the science behind it. So
Yeah.
it is at this stage it's beyond it's beyond reasonable doubt that stress and that has a part in it, and we know several mechanisms. One is, as I was saying, the what's called the HPA axis that basically runs all the show in terms of stress reaction. And the problem with that axis is that it was developed um, to save us from death. So it was developed to allow us to run, to flight, or fight. That's it. And based on the premises that if you can survive being chased by a lion or something of the sort, you would have time to rest. That is a very actual danger, very actual stress. I mean, if you see a lion or a bear chasing you, I mean, you can pinpoint the source. However, our system doesn't differentiate what's called perceived stress and actual and real stress. So when we stress for any reason at all, in terms of the most simple example would be, well, I have to commute today. Will that be traffic? Oh, if there's traffic, I'm going to be late, and or I may have an accident. That stress, that threat, our body gets it the same way as if we saw a bear. So the same mechanism that would lead us to run, we get it. This we have increased heart rate, have increased glucose in the body, we have increased cortisol, we have increased several different even pro-inflammation just to keep or pro-inflammatory pathways that will maintain the inflammation in a way that we can run faster. So that's the issue here, because we don't have a threat or a stress spike and then we rest. We have them over and over and over again. So a system that was designed to be acute is getting chronic. And that will lead to adaptations in our body that will make, for instance, cortisol, which is the biological principle of the cortisone or dexamethasone that or corticoids that most unfortunately most autoimmune patients are familiar with. When you have high cortisol being released over and over again, your ability to react to it in terms of dumping inflammation, it's jeopardized. So your level of inflammation, of systemic inflammation, gets higher. So when you get higher inflammation, you get higher inflammation everywhere when you talk about systemic inflammation. So if let's call if your weak link is the myelin sheath, and inflammation in myelin sheath is what's causing your symptoms, then you'll get worse. That's the same reason why people feel much worse when it's hot, because heat will increase inflammation. So if it increases inflammation, you'll feel the symptoms of inflammation, fatigue, and the specific symptoms of the autoimmune disease. So going back to the question, if the stress plays a part, yes, definitely, definitely. And I'm sometimes I'm
Maybe
accused that.
maybe
Sorry.
next week we can go through
Yeah,
some
for
of the
sure.
symptoms of MS because I know for myself, I was misdiagnosed for 15 years because I would go to the emergency room with one symptom only, and they would always diagnose it as a pinched nerve, fatigue. They would diagnose it as all these things. But when I walked in the emergency room and I couldn't walk correctly, and I was balance issues, walking issues, numbness issues, tingling issues. When they put those together, then they gave me an MRI and they, uh,
Yeah,
gave
after
me
that
the
it's easier, right?
diagnosis. But listen, I think with the Zoom, we only get 40 minutes and we're at about 37 right now.
No,
Is that not correct?
no, it's only when you are more than one on one,
Oh, okay.
it's
Well, then
limited.
I listen, I've got all day, so keep talking away because I know people, this is going to be a good thing. It's going to be not only a good thing, it's going to be a great thing because in the US, we do not have anything like this.
Yeah,
And so I have
yeah.
high hopes
So
for it. So
no, I
just
mean,
continue
I
on.
want to make sure that people know they can submit questions, and um, most of my appointments, especially in first appointment, I spend usually take around now between an hour and 15 and an hour and a half, and the vast majority of that is just explaining and doing and making sure that the patient understands the ins and outs of the treatment to make him feel comfortable. The reason I do it is because the, in my perspective, the easiest part is to prescribe things, is to adjust vitamin D up and down and the other supplements. The hard part is managing stress, managing expectations, managing doubts. And that's where I focus. And most of my follow-up appointments are kind of discussing around this is either fantastic, you're getting better, and thankfully is the vast majority of my appointments
That's got
are,
to be very rewarding for you being a doctor, seeing people come
yeah.
back. And yeah, I
Yeah,
can't.
unfortunately it gets too frequent that I get used to it. So it's I don't get me wrong, I'm deeply grateful that we met, Dr. Coimbra and I met in person, and I was able to start this treatment because there I have few patients that if I didn't if it wasn't me that saw them previously and then after, I wouldn't believe that that would be the same person, because the improvement was so incredible and unexpected. So that's why when you contact me to do this series of Ask the Doctor, I said yes, because that's the way that I have to reach out to more people and answer questions that my patients have, that I reply to them, that I answer to them, but I guess that most people may have as well. So yeah, so any question, no matter how controversial it is, I want to be able to address it. Obviously, I cannot go into personal details. I cannot discuss and give medical recommendations over wherever Facebook or YouTube. But nonetheless, I think there are a lot of common questions, whether it is what can I do to improve chances of success? What can I do to get better faster? What may be um, putting a ceiling of the recovery? Or what other treatments may exist that are in par with Professor Coimbra treatment or not? And there's there's always a question about dieting and all these different protocols, and we have to face the truth. All of them work, otherwise they wouldn't have any traction. The question is why they work. Are they better or worse than the Coimbra Protocol, why I do believe so incredibly that the Coimbra Protocol is the best option to any autoimmune disease based on the evidence that exists out there. So yeah, I want to be available to everyone that may be listening to us, and to week after week to address their questions and make sure that we can help them.
When I started this, I had a couple of gals that I would call on my bad days, on my hard days. But really, when I started in 2017 in the United States, there was very, very few people to talk to, very little information. The stuff on YouTube, uh, was not in that detail, not that detail. And so that's one of the reasons I want to get this out there, because when I got diagnosed, I began to weep. And I told the doctor, um, I may not get any better, but use me as a guinea pig, because I don't want anybody to go through what I'm going through. And lo and behold, I found the Coimbra Protocol, and I went back to the same doctor and I handed him the MRIs. And I said, I want you to look at these. And he threw them on his table. And he said, I see MRIs like that all the time. And I'm like, no, I don't think you do. I mean, it was just incredible. When I saw it all, it's like you want it to be real. You're sick, and you're sick, and they told you the disease, and they told you there's no cure, and you know the some of the treatments are terrible, and you just have no hope. And so when I started getting better, I felt that I needed to share this with the world. Well, I told my protocol, quote unquote, doctor at that time, I said, I want to get better. And then I want to tell the whole world. He said, well, get better, then tell the people that are listening to you. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Everybody's going to listen to me. They're going to, realize how bad I was and how good I am now. Now, I have begged people in wheelchairs that could barely talk, and I begged them to do this, and they won't do it. They won't do it because I don't have on a white jacket that says Dr. John Otwell. Uh, I did challenge another lady who was blind on her 40th birthday. Denise Meadows is her name. She'll be doing an interview with me. Denise woke up blind on her 40th birthday. She was getting ready to self-catheter. She'd been to the best doctors in the world. Today, Denise is back at work, working 12-hour shifts, and she can walk 5 miles a day. I don't know if she's still doing that or not. But the fact of the matter is, I challenged her to try it. And I'm like, what do you got to lose? And there are people now watching that have tried everything. And I give them the same challenge. I'm like, if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But what you're doing right now is not working for you. And I feel for those people. I've talked to them. I've seen them in nursing homes, and so that's why we're doing this. Ask the doctor. But you'll have to reel me in. I have a ADD, and so I tend to,
Yeah, don't worry.
if a squirrel goes running by, I'm off with the squirrel. So, but I have high hopes for this, and I know we're going to do well and have a lot of questions. It's going to grow
Yeah.
rapidly.
Yes, fantastic. And on that note, let me just tell you how an inspiration you are, your strength and your will to put yourself out there and use your example to try to motivate others, and that's fantastic. Congratulations and thank you
Well, thank
for
you.
the
I
example.
thank you for saying that. You know, fortunately or unfortunately, I've been through a lot. I've fallen over 100 times. I've cut my head. I've had blood running in my mouth. I've wet on myself and gone in the bathroom on myself. And man, I've gone through a lot. And I don't wish it upon my worst enemy. But the good part of all that is a lot of you watching right now are not that bad. I've talked to people and they barely have any symptoms at all. They just have the diagnosis. And I implore them to do this and never get worse. Uh, some will, some won't. I know that I didn't. I put the book on the shelf and I never took MS seriously until I hit the wheelchair. And when I hit that wheelchair, I got real serious real fast. And it became a serious disease then. And unfortunately, by the time I was diagnosed to the time I hit the wheelchair was about a year and a half. Now, for most people, it's not going to be that rapid, but it can be. That's what I tell everybody is that you don't know. You don't know where your disease is at and going. Uh, it can be rapid or it can be slow. Lord knows I had people that I knew that had MS. They carried on a fairly normal life. So I thought we had MS under control, you know, in the United States, because you never heard that much about it. But little
Yeah.
did I know, you know, I'm glad I was stupid when it came to MS. I knew two things about MS. It had an M in front of it, and I didn't want it. That's all I knew. I knew no symptoms. I knew nothing about the disease. But I tell people this: MS is worse than ALS. And people will say, oh, what do you mean? ALS, you go downhill and you're dead 3.5 years or 4 years. You can be. And I say, exactly. Your suffering is over with. But with MS, you can lay in a nursing home for 10, 12, 15 years,
Yeah, that's right.
like an old piece of fruit and just rot. I mean, you lose all your body functions and you can't eat. You have a stomach tube and you can't talk. Some people can't talk. Some people cry. I have a patient, well, I shouldn't call her a patient, but I have a person I'm working with now, and she cries just nonstop as I'm talking to her, and she can't help it. And so there's so many bad symptoms. And again, I'm going on another tangent, but this is a terrible disease. You know, I tell people research, research, and research some more because Lord knows I did. I was a huge skeptic coming into this. I was like, you know, they told me all the percentages of people getting better. And I'm like, well, those are good, but come on, you know,
Yeah.
get real. This is too good to be real, you know.
Yeah.
It's not real. And it was. I mean, when I started getting better, I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs. I couldn't believe it, you know.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's going to be others out there like that. You know, when people tell me that and people give me accolades, I'm like, you know, I want you to go through what I went through. I'm not doing this so that uh, for for any financial gain or any, you know, accolades or anything, but I said I know what it's like, and that's why I do it. You know,
Yeah.
so you know,
Fantastic.
Dr. Coimbra never did this to get rich. He's never gotten rich over this, and he's taken a lot of flack over what he's done. I have a lot of respect for him. So hopefully one day we can talk to him. You know, I know that's
Yeah.
you know
Yeah,
kind of
I'm sure he would love to. Yeah, fantastic.
all right.
Okay, John. So I think our first session uh, was a very significant success.
Okay.
I hope we were able to answer a question. If not, people let us know so we can readdress it more in
Yeah.
depth.
Right now, I think the easiest way to submit a questions would be to go to the North American Coimbra Protocol page if you're a member and submit a question to me, and I'll try
Yeah.
to ask the doctor. We'll try to address it next time. We have not set a time limit, so who knows, how long it'll take or if we'll
Yes,
address it the next week or not, but like I've said, we'll try to get to it eventually.
fantastic. John, very nice to see you again. Thank you so much for setting this up, and I hope to see you again next week.
All right, Doc, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.
All right.
So, yeah, fantastic, John. So let me know if the recordings are good or we need to re-record it. If anything comes up, let me know.